To be clear, I'm not against the idea of more Shrek films. It's just they have so little to play off of. But then again, Shrek Forever After had very little to play off of, and I thought that was good. But then again, when you have so little to work with, anything can happen, I guess, good or bad. What's going on, guys? Blood Moon Bobby here, and I think today is going to be the day of because I'll be talking about two topics here that I'm really not sure how to feel about. Starting off here, as you guys can see from the thumbnail, I'll be talking about Shrek, or more specifically the Shrek reboots. So what's going on is that Universal, which now through Comcast owns DreamWorks Animation, and wants Shrek reboots, and they're tapping Illumination founder Chris Meledandri to basically spearhead it. I don't think it's not going to be that he's going to direct them. I think it's going to be they're looking to Meledandri to hire new talent to make the Shrek reboots. So Illumination, as you guys know, is the company behind Despicable Me, Minions, and Sing, some other movies that I could name, movies that some people like, some really, really don't. So Meledandri basically said that while they're basically seen as reboots, he doesn't want to change them too much, and specifically what he means is that he doesn't intend to change the voice cast all that much. And I have a quote from here that says, quote, "When you look back on those vocal performances, they're awesome, and while you certainly could make case for a complete reinvention, I find myself responding to my own nostalgic feelings of wanting to go back to those characterizations. The challenge for us has been to find something that really does feel like it's not simply yet another film in a series of sequels." And Variety specifically points out that Meledandri is talking about voice actors like Mike Myers, who plays Shrek, Eddie Murphy, as Donkey, and Antonio Banderas, as Puss in Boots. They don't specifically mention Cameron Diaz, who as Fiona, which I'm pretty sure they're going to be asking her to come back, since Fiona is also a really essential character across all the Shrek films. And Meledandri has another quote here on basically how he's committed to making more quality Shrek movies, and he says here, quote, "There's a tremendous amount of fun to be had in that world, but it's a high bar to find a story that's truly world. You want to find something in the narrative that really feels like a departure." So I'll actually start off by talking about how I feel about the first four Shrek movies. First Shrek movie I thought was pretty cool. Shrek 2 was even better. And Shrek the Third, I actually kind of thought this was boring, to be honest. And I just saw Shrek Forever After yesterday, and that was actually surprisingly good, which I think how I feel about Shrek Forever After is going to play a big part of how I feel about the idea of a Shrek reboot. So I really don't know. I mean, it's early days, so that's why Meledandri also sounds very uncertain about what he wants to do, because he's basically saying, because Variety especially is pointing out that, yeah, these are reboots, but Meledandri doesn't want to change too much as far as the voice cast. But if he doesn't want to change much of the voice cast, it sounds like he doesn't want to stray away too far from the overall Shrek story or the Shrek continuity. So I'm not really sure what he's looking for in a reboot. I can't really see him doing something like remaking Shrek, or doing like a retelling of Shrek, but changing up how he comes across characters like Donkey, Puss in Boots, and Fiona, because then it sounds like they're starting off on a whole new continuity, and Meledandri doesn't sound like he wants to change all that much. So I'm not really sure what he's looking for as far as a Shrek reboot goes. I mean, if anything, he sounds like he just wants to make more Shrek movies. And when he was saying, like, oh, I don't just want to make a whole, just want to rehash and make a whole ton of sequels, I think that's more him trying to convince a really skeptical audience, i.e. us, that, hey, I can make some really good Shrek movies. And I know Meledandri didn't direct the Illumination movies, but given how he runs the studio he founded, the movies that Illumination produces, I'm really not sure how to feel about that. And I actually saw Despicable Me 3 last night, and it was basically he it just felt like, hey, let's make another Despicable Me movie so we can get more money out of the box office. You know, the typical minion jokes, a lot of really childish humor. I remember there's like a scene where in Despicable Me 3, the bad guy Balthazar Brat blows off Gru's clothes, and he's like naked and he's floating around, and then a birthday party sees him and Gru is like covering up, and you know the Illumination sense of humor. And even though now that Universal basically has both Illumination and DreamWorks, I'm more concerned that if we get more Shrek movies, they're going to go in that Illumination kind of way, because I feel that the realistic thing Meledandri is going to do is he's probably going to hire much of the crew that worked on the Illumination movies, you know, because it's like, oh, hey, the Despicable Me movies were really successful and people seem to not hate them too much, but seem to like them okay. I personally like the first Despicable Me, but I really didn't like the third one. I haven't gotten a chance to see the second one yet because it was not on Netflix. But my concern is more it's gonna be basically like a Despicable Me clone. I mean, especially since, you know, the Shrek movies, we know in terms of its sense of humor, it's kind of more satirical. I feel it works a lot better for both the kids and adults, because, you know, kids could really get into Shrek, Fiona, Puss in Boots, and, you know, the toilet humor in that movies. But there's also a lot of satire in the Shrek films, especially, you know, like how Far, Far Away is basically run like Hollywood. The princesses are treated like celebrities. I remember in Shrek 2, the fairy tale creatures gather around and they watch this parody of Cops. You know, remember, I think it was called Knights, where Shrek, Donkey, and Puss in Boots get arrested by a bunch of knights. You know, it's that kind of world that really works well for both kids and adults. But I wouldn't be surprised, especially when you consider the toilet humor, the kind of childish toilet humor that's in movies like Despicable Me and Minions. I'm really concerned that the Shrek movies we're going to get are really going to capitalize on that sense of humor, because the way I think Illumination likes to work is they really like to cater more so towards kids rather than kids and adults. And I think what Meledandri is doing is he's still making this movie for the DreamWorks animation division. You know, we're not going to see when this new Shrek reboot comes out, it's not going to be like Universal, DreamWorks, and Illumination, as told to you rather annoyingly by a minion. So I think that's what he's going for there. In terms of how this reboot fits in the Shrek continuity, again, I'm really not sure how that's going to work. I can't really see them doing a remake of the first Shrek movie. Like, not only because it would get a really bad reputation, no pun intended, but also because it's borderline pointless if they're just going to do an animated remake of the first Shrek film. Like even if, you know, Meledandri's just like, oh, I'll just get my crew that made Despicable Me to make the new Shrek films, I think he's smart enough to know, yeah, I can't just do a remake of the first film. But in terms of where could this movie fit in the Shrek continuity, the funny thing is, the last Shrek movie I consider that really fits in the Shrek continuity was Shrek the Third, because it was the one, like, the way the Shrek movies work is the first three movies especially have this really solid storyline. You know, in the first Shrek movie, we're introduced to Shrek and he saves Princess Fiona, he meets Donkey and marries her at the end. The second movie, he's going to Far, Far Away, meeting her parents, and meeting Puss in Boots, and going up against the fairy godmother. And in the third one, the king of Far, Far Away dies, and Shrek has to go find a successor. So even though I didn't like Shrek the Third, I guess I'll keep holding it up, I do understand it has its place in the Shrek continuity. Now, the funny thing is that Shrek Forever After, the way it fits in the Shrek continuity is actually rather anger-inducing. Like, you can tell they're just squeezing it in just so they could make another Shrek movie. Like, the way it works is that back when Fiona was still going back and forth, turning into an ogre and then back into a human, her parents were really desperate, so they almost made this deal to Rumpelstiltskin where the king of Far Far Away will sign off his kingdom to Rumpelstiltskin, and in return Fiona's curse will be lifted. But at the last minute they get word that Fiona was rescued, so they don't have to go through with this. And that's basically the only way Shrek Forever After fit in that continuity. But it was still a pretty decent movie. It wasn't as good as the first two Shrek films, but I thought it was definitely much better than Shrek the Third. But yeah, it was still a really entertaining movie. I was laughing every now and again. And by the end, I really wanted to see the story through. Because throughout the story, Shrek has to convince Fiona. Because now, Shrek, is put in a time as if he never existed. He has to convince Fiona to fall in love with him. And I was basically at the edge of my seat. So I am convinced that they could make more Shrek movies. I don't know about a reboot, because even Meledandri sounds very indecisive, and I have a feeling, because when he gets the people together to make this movie, and if they go too far off the grid, and I feel like he's going to stand up and say, nope, we have to make this fit in the Shrek world somehow because everyone knows and loves these characters. And I know that's what he's basically saying. Like, he wants to keep the cast the same because he knows everybody likes Mike Myers as Shrek, Eddie Murphy as Donkey, and Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots. Like, I'm not totally naive on that from him, and I don't think he wants to, like, totally shake up the Shrek continuity. So I don't know what he's gonna do. Like, I could see Shrek having more sequels, as much as I know people don't really want more Shrek sequels, but it's technically possible, and I think they can be good. I don't know about making them as good as the first two Shrek movies. Like, I think that's really a bit of a stretch, but if they're just as good as Shrek Forever After, then it could work. And in the case of, and I know there was also Shrek the Halls, the Christmas special, which doesn't really fit in the Shrek continuity aside from, it seems to take place after Shrek the Third. But, it was basically off doing its own thing for a holiday special. And I know it's a holiday special, it's not a feature-length film per se. But I think the idea of making another Shrek movie could work if it's funny, but there's very little to work with. But then again, Shrek Forever After had very little to work with, and it still turned out decent. But when you have very little to work with, that's a very tall order. And Shrek Forever After was answering a really tall order to begin with. So please let me know your thoughts down below. I have a feeling a lot of you guys are going to have a lot to say about the idea that Chris Meledandri is basically producing more Shrek movies. Are you excited to see them? I can tell you by Twitter that I don't think a lot of people are excited to see them. But I know you guys are going to have a lot to say, especially you, Speed Force Spectre. If you're watching this video, you're really a great guy. I'd like to hear what you have to say. So please leave those thoughts down below. If you have any ideas for future videos or more Shrek videos, you can leave them in the comments, or you can also email me. My email address is in the description. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all later. Hey guys, be sure to like this Blood Moon Bobby video if you enjoyed it. Please share this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. Be sure to ring the notification bell to be notified about my latest upload. Follow me on my social media pages at Blood Moon Bobby to find out about what I'll be covering next and for more of my opinions. Thanks for watching.